Go on road, yeah.
You ready?
Ready?
Let's bring this public hearing on proposed tax rates for 2020, 2021, and special meeting of the Bullitt County Board of Education to order. I don't need to read all this, so I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion.
I have a motion. We need a second. Motion and a second. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt agenda. Okay, explanation of tax rates. No, not for
Not
this
for
one.
this one.
You lucky.
I'm lucky. Okay. Okay, can everybody hear me all right? Good? Okay, we're going to talk about the 2021 school tax hearing today. First of all, I kind of want to go over some information that was requested from several of you. So I'll kind of be talking about tax rates, and I'm also going to be talking about some of our funding as well. It has gradually went up, and in fiscal year 2021, it's estimated to be $8.4 billion. So you can see that our tax assessment here in Bullitt County is on the increase. So the value of our homes and the businesses that are coming here, that value is increasing. So what is that a percent? A percent change just from last year to this year, that has increased 18.73%. The previous years, they kind of remained constant, or very constant, 5.2% in 2020, 4.75% in 2019. So this year, there's a huge spike in the tax assessments.
And the increase in that assessment is due mostly to tangible property, not necessarily real estate property. So we've had two large pharmaceutical companies that have located into our district, and the inventory basically that they have is what has attributed to most of the property assessment increase that we're seeing this year.
Yes, and I think the tax assessment actually went through the north end of the county this past year. I think Shepherdsville is key, I guess, for this year. So what this means is our SEEK funding is going to decrease. In fiscal year 2015, we had $45 million. It has decreased. For this year, we're expecting $39 million. So that's going to be a significant decrease. Even from last year, it's a $3 million decrease in funding that we're going to be getting from SEEK. We're not getting from SEEK.
And you may know, SEEK came from the Kentucky Education Reform Act in 1992, and the formula was designed to help equalize schools. So in those districts that are in poor populations in eastern Kentucky where property values aren't worth as much, they get higher increase or higher number of percentages of SEEK funding. And so when you start to see that balance take over, where your property values start to increase, then the level of funding that you get from the state through seat dollars actually decreases. There's been a lot of conversations over the course of the last 2 or 3 budget cycles about overhauling SEEK and doing some different things, and a lot of that has to do with some of the equity issues that it causes when you do see a rise in property value, and the shift that it causes in the funding burden from the state level to the local level, which we're going to talk a little bit about here in the next couple slides.
So we are not just going to be losing seed funding this year. We're seeing that our state grant is trending down as well. We went from in 17, $3 million down to $2.2 million. So that's a huge decrease. And you'll also notice that professional development and instructional resources, that actually is not funded by the state anymore. That stopped in 2019. The biggest significant one that I can see up there is actually preschool. You can't really kind of see the numbers there, but preschool this year we had to add $365,000 into our general fund budget because that's a shortfall in our preschool. But you can see all the other grants that we have there and the amounts that we're allocated for this year. So district funding sources. This is taken from our school report card. They started doing the school report card a little differently in 17 and 18. The numbers for 1920 haven't come in yet. So in 17-18, we utilized, we got most of our federal sources with 6.5%. 57.5% came from state sources and 36% came from local. And for 18-19, that federal has increased to 6.7, state decreased to 56.1, and the local actually increased to 37.2. So you can see the trend that we are in fact starting to get the burden from the local dollar. We're having to spend our local money more than we would state. So Bullitt County property assessment is going up as well as the result of SEEK funding is going down. So every $1 million increase in the assessment, 3,000 less in SEEK. So in fiscal year 19, our assessment was $6.7 billion. The assessment for 2021, which is this year, is going to be $8.4 billion. That's a lot of property here in Bullitt County. So we are expected to lose $3 million in SEEK. State grants are also trending down, which means we will continue to rely on our local tax dollars to support Bullitt County Public Schools. And due to the COVID-19, the district expects significant mid-year cuts across all funding sources.
I'm going to go back to this slide for just a second, too. I want to point out 2 things. You'll notice that we have not received any professional development funds or instructional resource funds since fiscal year 18. So this will be the 3rd consecutive year where we've not received any funds in those 2 areas. However, we still provide professional development opportunities, and we still provide instructional materials to our teachers in the form of textbooks and other instructional supplies, curriculum supplies for them to be able to utilize. So all that has also been taken from these pots of money that we've traditionally gotten from out of the state budget, and it's had to be incurred in the local budget and the money that we get in general fund, collect in general fund through our tax assessments and rates that we've set too. And so on that last bullet, you know, of course, we've all seen the economic impacts of what's happened since COVID hit in March. And while we've not been told anything definitive in the way of mid-year budget reductions, you can't help but assume that that's probably going to be coming in December or January. The state only passed a 1-year budget last year when we had the long session, which normally is a 2-year budget. But they only pass a 1-year budget, so when they come back in January, they're going to have to pass a budget again for next year. But we know that the projected revenue, while it's not quite as bad as they originally projected in the very beginning of the year, we already know that the first quarter numbers are going to be come in lower than what was actually projected at the year. So we anticipate some mid-year budget cuts that we're going to have to make at some point, and those, of course, are going to have to come from somewhere within our budget for this year.
And also, we had a meeting we had with the FRISC, and we have been told that the first and second quarter we can expect what we've always gotten from that, but they cannot guarantee the third or fourth quarter of this year. So we've already been
from the Friskies.
For Friskies. Mm-hmm. Now that may change because we've heard our governor his thoughts on that. So I went back and I looked at what the COVID impact has done so far and what kind of money we've been spending on this. You'll see in the blue, that is the cleaning supplies that we have, the amount of money that we've been spending on cleaning. Then I've got the compliance total, and that would be like the shields that we would put up, the barriers and things of that nature. Special education, PPE, food service, medical supplies, and other. So you can kind of see what the breakdown is, where we're spending our COVID money. I was reviewing a lot of those purchase orders today and looking through there, and I don't see, I've seen a couple that might have been coded incorrectly. I quickly fixed those. But as a rule of thumb, I don't feel like people are spending frivolously. I think they're buying things that they truly need.
Can you
So-
go back for a second? Just, as you read those, since I can't read them, you read
Oh,
those,
okay.
you read them blue and clockwise, right?
Yes, I did with the most similar.
Okay.
Okay, so we have what we call CARES money. Underneath CARES, you've got two pots of money. You've got ESSER money and CARE money. So those first two are actually what we call CARE funding. ESSER, we received $1,523,096. In CARES money, we received $261,273. Now, we have not received that in hand. We have to spend the money, then we have to request it. I've only requested probably less than $20,000 at this point through GEAR money. I believe it's GEAR for it. Yeah, it's GEAR money. I'm also working on an application with FEMA. FEMA will reimburse us up to 75%. We do not know where that's going to go because they want me to give them an itemized list of every single item that we have spent related to COVID. So I will be sending them the list of everything that we have spent so far. And whatever they will pay for, we're going to take their 75%, and then I'm going to use the ESSER and the GEAR money, try to see if we can't make a balance of this. Hopefully we do. I'm guessing that it's going to be good. I can't see that they're going to give us $1 million, but maybe they will. Total expenses to date that we have spent is $2,523,819.84. So we have a net shortfall of $739,000. Now, FEMA, if they give us or allow us to, I guess, make purchases and get our money back, that hopefully that'll look a little bit better. But if not, if they say no, you don't get it, we got about $739,000. So.
Do we get a copy of this PowerPoint?
Okay.
Or did we already, and
You
I
have
didn't
it.
see it, it was in the, with the agenda
It
stuff?
wasn't the agenda stuff, but I can share it with you, Susan.
Yeah, we can. So I'm going to be optimistic, and I'm going to hope that FEMA will do it. I will do everything in our power to list every single item that we possibly can to see what we can get back.
And that 2.5 number too, that's the sanitation equipment that was purchased for each school. That's all the PPE, the hand sanitizers that are going in each classroom, the dispensers that are going around the hallways. There were some things in food service that were purchased as a result to try and eliminate some of the buildup and the increase of social distancing in that area. The bus monitors that we need in order to be able to take those health checks before students get on the bus. The thermometers are going to be used on the buses and at the building levels to take temperatures of students before they come in. The extra additional help with the cleaning crew with those temp folks in the buildings to help us with the sanitation throughout the day. So all those are incorporated in that number. But you can still see, even after and the increase in Chromebooks and the other technology supplies that we purchased with the hotspots and those things is included in that number as well. And even with the ESSER and the GEARS money applied, we're still looking at about $739,000 that in the tentative budget, we didn't budget for because we didn't know we were going to have these COVID expenses when we drafted that budget back in March. So that's the difficult part that we sort of find ourselves in right now.
Do we expect to spend more than this on that material like
I
that
think
Yeah.
definitely.
later on in the year or whatever?
I was just talking to Ed, and from what I've gathered is just the cleaning supplies that we have, that's probably maybe a 60-day supply that we have on hand. So I've just read an article that FEMA did, and they said something about possibility that they may not be reimbursing cloth masks at some point. I know. So I'm not, I've got to get our application in there and get finished, so. But I don't think we have went excessive. I think they have bought what they needed instead of hoarding,
But 4 times that to get to the end of the year.
Yeah, it could be, yes. So we probably need additional funding from the federal government or even the state government.
And there are talks of that. We don't count on it, but that's been something that's been discussed over the course of the last 6 weeks or so in Washington. And I know that's what all of the state government and the governors are saying now, and they're hoping for the next round that it will help state government and also local school districts to help mitigate some of that cost.
Well, and also this actually, it has the Chromebooks as well,
Mhm.
$780-something thousand that we spent on Chromebooks for elementary. So that is included in here too. So I guess the next couple one wouldn't probably be as high as this.
Yeah.
But from here on out, it'll be to maintain the cleaning supplies that we need. All big purchases are included in this, but it's just going to take those day-to-day supplies that we'll need in order to maintain the effort to keep sanitizing.
Well, and the staff too that you had to hire, I'm assuming will continue for, we have no idea how long.
For at least this year, and all that's in that number.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't included all of that in there. So what tax rate is proposed for the district? Due to the continued assessment growth in Bullitt County, the district has proposed a current rate of 71.6 for real property and 4% tax rate of 72.2 for personal. The real property tax remains the same as last year, and the personal property is 1.00 lower than last year. And just to kind of give you the tax rate history, I just kind of put something together since 2013-14 to current, so that you can kind of see where our tax rates have been going. Our surrounding districts, Bullitt County proposed 71.6, Nelson was 73, Oldham is 78.8, Shelby was 73.1, and Jefferson is 80.6. Just kind of give you a heads up as to what our surrounding districts are doing.
It's kind of interesting, is that because Oldham County certainly has,
I know.
as much tax, property tax as we do.
And the thing is, most of the districts have.
What's the deal there?
Or I think most of them have taken the 4% increase because it actually reduced their current rates, or their
Right.
rate to reduce them.
Right.
So most of them are taking the 4% because of that reduction.
For us to take the 4%, we would have to raise the rate, and so
Yes.
under the current climate, we didn't feel that that was an appropriate request to make.
Yeah.
Unless you want to go there.
No, thank you.
I've already calculated how much we can keep from that. Just kidding. So what about the current rate option?
Not
What does
this
that
year.
mean to our property owners? Tax bills depend, of course, on the value of the particular property. At the proposed real property rate of 71.6, the owner of a $100,000 home would pay $716, which is the same as it was last year. How will the tax rate benefit our schools and the community? The proposed tax is expected to produce $55,460,088.03. The general fund tax levied in fiscal year 20 was 71.6, produced a revenue of $47,584,467.75. So the proposed is estimated to generate about $7.8 million.
So what percent of our last year's proposed do we actually collect?
Whatever that percentage, I can't calculate. Can you calculate?
Which one?
The percentage?
Last year's proposed rate?
Yeah, we actually
55.
collected 47 last year.
Right,
This
oh,
year we're
55.
expecting to get 55.
We got 47 of 55, yeah.
So the potential revenue is $7.8 million. Of that, we have to put aside $132,310 into the building fund. I had to project an uncollectible amount of taxes, $236,000. We do have to pay for collections to our sheriff's office, that's $173,000. And this is only on the extra money that we would receive. Our seed funding, we're going to have to adjust that by $3 million. So we would subtract all of that from that potential revenue. So realistically, the additional revenue that we would pull into the district is $4.3 million. But our assessment last year increased to $1 billion.
Yeah.
I can't read that. It was over $1 billion increase.
And we did do the 1% increase for our staff, so that would go to help pay for that, but then the majority of the rest of that's going straight to contingency. We're not planning to add any new programs or anything for this school year, but we're looking to put anything extra that we get in terms of revenue from keeping the tax rate the same, going straight to contingency in the event that we could offset any mid-year budget reductions and any increase in COVID expenses that we would have over the course of the rest of the year.
What percent is our contingency today?
3.5.
How much?
3.5.
The state says 2 is the requirement, and anywhere between 2 and 4 is deemed as healthy. The other thing that's important to note, I think, that I'm extremely proud of is that of our entire budget, only about between 60 and 62% is spent on salaries and benefits. They'll tell you in the finance course, if you're 80%, that's healthy. And so for us to be at 60 to 65, that tells you all of our money goes to our students. We spend about $12,000 plus per student ratio right now. And so I think it's extremely important that our budget's healthy, but we got to make sure that we get that contingency back up close to 4 to 4.5% to make sure that any mid-year budget reductions that we have or any increased COVID expenses, we've got the means in order to do that without having to severely cut programs and things that we offer our students. Because that's the only place we can cut. We really can't cut much in staffing just because we're that lean already at that 60, 62% range of our total budget. Sorry.
The last one, the benefits for the 2020 revenue, maybe allocated as follows. Assisting in sustaining our previous 1% district salary increase, instructional programs, funding our unfunded mandate for preschool, additional staff needed for the Bullitt County Cloud Academy, maintenance of roofing projects, compensating for state cuts and professional development, transportation, and instructional resources, help address some of the COVID-19 expenses, and compensate for potential mid-year budget reductions. So the last one, the proposed tax rates at 71.6 cents for real estate, which is the same as last year, 72.2 cents for personal property, which is lower than last year by 1.00, and the 47.7 is for motor vehicle, which is the same as last year.
Okay. We need to do a public hearing now?
Yes. Any other questions on this before I take this presentation off the screen?
We might want to just leave it there for now.
Okay,
We've
we can do
got
that.
somebody coming in to
Yep.
speak, and
Do we have somebody want to speak, or?
we have someone that wants to speak.
Okay.
I think John's bringing him up, right? Did you somebody
Yes.
signal him? Okay.
Good job, Lisa.
Yeah, very
Good job.
Very
I feel like
thorough.
I'm the bearer of bad news.
No, you're
No,
not.
just-
That's your job.
Want to give you the realistic, accurate picture of what we're dealing with.
Yes.
No one has arrived to speak.
Maybe he got the word.
I'm sorry?
So maybe he got the word. He got the memo.
Okay, well then, may we move on?
I think we can.
Okay, all right. We'll close that public hearing, and then we need a
need to-
recommendation for the
I think we need to take action on closing the public hearing since no one's here to speak.
Okay, so do we need a motion to close that public hearing?
Yes.
Motion.
I have a motion, Diane. We need a second, Linda. You got them? All those in favor say yes.
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 We are closing the public hearing. All right, ready for our recommendation?
I am.
All right.
The recommendation is to adopt the tax rates as follows: 71.6 cents on real property, which keeps the rate the same as the previous year, and then 72.2 cents on personal property, which lowers that by 1 cent.
Do we do those separately?
Together.
Okay. I've got a
Yes, ma'am.
recommendation here and then another recommendation on the next page.
Yes, but the 47 ones.
All right,
I'm
we have to
sorry.
do those separately. Okay, so on to adopt.
Wait, we need to do, we can do them all three together, right?
Motor
Okay.
vehicle and utility.
All right, so let me read that, let me read it again. Let me read it again. So adopt the tax rate as follows: 71.66 cents on real property, 72.2 cents on personal property, 47.7 cents on motor vehicle, and 3% on the utility tax.
You got that recommendation, got it all down there?
Yes.
All right. We have a recommendation, we need a motion.
Motion?
We have a motion to Daryl, we need a second. You pick, Steve or Glenda?
Got it.
Steve,
Steve's got it, okay. All right, we have a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say yes.
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 Motion carries on the adoption of the 2021 tax rates. They say right here, didn't they? Yeah. All right. Now, do we need an action of?
No, you can actually, actually recess.
For a recess?
You
All
can
right,
actually
we're going to
recess.
take about a 5-minute recess.
All right.
Go to the restroom, put my mask off and breathe. Then we could just start back, all right?
Yep.
Darryl? Okay. All right, consent items. Oh, wait, Andy, you ready?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, consent items. Everybody had a chance to look at them? All right, we need a recommendation.
To approve consent items as presented.
All right, we have a recommendation. We need a motion.
Motion.
Diane motion. Need a second.
Second.
Linda second. We have a motion second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, new business. Althea,
Here she comes.
here she comes, running in too.
All right. Mr. Danny Clemens, Principal of Bullitt Alternative Center, Riverview Opportunity Center in Spring Meadows, requests an increase to the extended days for the assistant principal position from 10 to 23. The additional 13 days will be paid through Title I funds. This addition of extended days is consistent with the other high school assistant principals and allows the administration at Back, Rock, and Spring Meadows to continue to support the needs of each of their students.
Great, recommendation.
To approve the request to increase the number of extended days by 13 for the assistant principal at Back Rock and Spring Meadows.
All right, we have a recommendation. We need a motion.
Motion.
We have a motion, Diane. Need a second. Linda. Any?
Get it together.
Yeah. Any discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Motion carries for the
Thank you.
additional days. Get her. All right, we have a few
Yep. Got
general
a
discussion items, I think.
few general discussion items. There's a couple things that I wanted to share with you, and I know there were some things that you guys wanted to talk about as well. First thing, I'm going to let Rachel, she's got her kiddo with her tonight, so I'm going to let her go first. This week is the start of our fall athletic season per KHSAA, and so been a ton of hard work done by our Rachel and our athletic directors and our principals, coaches, to prepare for this. And so I just wanted her to give you a quick update on what that looks like and what that's going to be going forward. So,
Okay.
Rachel.
Okay, thank you guys for your time. I want to piggyback off what Dr. Bacon just shared. I would like to give a shout out to Mr. Jason Wells. He's the athletic director at Bullitt Central High School. Mr. Ronnie Bryson is the athletic director at North Bullitt High School. And Mr. Kenny Hughes is the athletic director at Bullitt East High School. They, along with Miss Lisa Howe, have been an integral part of our team to put together what we feel is the best plan going forward for our student athletes, our community to have some sort of normalcy through this pandemic. So what you see up on the screens are basically our 2020-2021 COVID-19 policy, or I shouldn't say policy, procedures and guidelines that we're going to go through, and this will be a continual fluid document because right now this only addresses the fall sports. It does not address our winter and our spring sports as we move forward.
Do we have a copy of this someplace that
We can
I'll
get you
share
a
that with
copy.
you too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can have access to it. This has been shared with all coaches so that they can have access. And what you'll see throughout is I broke it into chunks. The first chunk that you'll see is the student athletes. And basically, this is our protocol that has been in place, is they have the checks and the guidelines to make sure that they are feeling well. They get their temperature checks. They fill out a healthy at sport form, whatever that sport is identified as, and then they have to fill out these two general questions. We are not sharing equipment because that's not one of the pieces that we're permitted to do. We have the hygiene practices, and what you'll also notice is we used to have what's called a water cow. For those of you that don't know, it's basically a sprinkler system with a lot of hoses extended off. We've had to eliminate that, and student athletes have had to bring their own water bottle. So that's how we're keeping with the hydration. If we have a student athlete that does contract COVID-19, we do have a specific protocol in place that was put in so that way we not only can help with contact tracing, but we can also help to support that student athlete to return to their pitch. Unfortunately, it is a long healing process. Even though a student athlete may not display symptoms, we still have to follow the same process for every student athlete because we want to make sure that when they return to their athletic arena, they are in the best healthy condition and we're not forcing or rushing through the process. So as he slides down, you'll see that's what the confirmed positive. There are ands in there because all of these are in place for every student athlete. Our tracking process has started, and we're starting to have student athletes who are contracting it. But again, we've had these protocols in place. Now it's just, we now know who has and who hasn't, and our coaches have been fantastic to work with a sport or sporting activity to make sure the information is passed, but we're also not breaking any FERPA violations to say this is who this specific student athlete is that has contracted.
And I'll say this as well, this has also been the case of our staff since they've been back for the last 3 weeks, but we have had no confirmed transmissions as a result of activity within any of our activities. And so I want to say that as well, that everything that's coming in and we get student athletes that are and staff members that are testing positive, we're doing that outside of the school and work setting.
So, and then the second section ties down to the coaches. Within the coaches, it lays out what their expectations are to make sure that not only they're ensuring their student athletes fit the guidelines, but also that they're following the guidelines, that they're checking their temperatures, that they're wearing their mask. The guidelines recently changed from the CDC on August 31st. If you are indoors, you have to wear a mask at all times. If you are outdoors and you're 6 feet apart, you can take your mask off. So what we are having our athletic directors do is do periodic checks at various different sporting practices to make sure our coaches are compliant, and if they're not, they're immediately addressing those situations. So far, we haven't had anybody that's been defiant or doesn't want it because they're in the same boat. They want our student athletes back out there. They have a great relationship with them, and so they want to provide that social, emotional support through the athletic arena. There are components down in there, what to do if it even walks them through if a student athlete calls. It walks them through if they come in contact, how to do this process. Again, all of this is collaboration through our athletic directors, Lisa Howe, myself, Dr. Bacon, Becky, to make sure we're all on the same page of what needs to happen for Healthy-wise.
And also Andrea Renfro and the staff at the Bullitt County Health Department have been instrumental in giving us feedback on these plans as well.
As we continue to slide down, these are the specific guidelines that we've had in place the entire time. So none of these guidelines are going to look different. What we're having is the difference is if we use transportation and we travel outside of the district. And so because those procedures have changed, we are making sure all of our coaches understand our policies and procedures tied to student athletes. So again, all of the hyperlinks, the blue lines that you see, are nothing different that haven't been in place. We just want to make sure those are at the forefront of what needs to be filled out anytime that things happen. And it will talk about, you'll see as you're reading there, the number of buses. And so we already have the permission for parents to transport if they choose to do that. In order to have that take place, though, we have to have that form filled out. We can't just say, we don't have a form, then you can drive on your own. The coach has to have that stuff on file. And then the accident report is if we, again, this isn't anything new. This is what we have in schools. If something were to happen that we know either EMS is contacted or we know a student athlete's family is taking them to a health care after a game or a practice due to an event, they have to have that filled out. So again, nothing new. It's just putting it under one condensed document to try to reduce the long pages we have been sent from the guidelines from the Kentucky High School Athletic Association.
You'll notice a difference in travel in district and out of district, and this is at the recommendation for the Department for Public Health. If you're traveling in district, they view that very similar as traveling to and from school. So the same guidelines that were in place for transportation of students to and from school are in place for those extracurricular events. So you can sit to the seat, mask on the whole time, so on and so forth. However, if you're traveling out of district and they view that as a longer travel, then the proximity matters, and so we're only permitted to put 10 students on a bus if we were traveling outside the district. And so they have to be socially distanced 6 feet, and they have to wear masks because of the time that they're going to be on the bus. That's why we have, for this year, permitted student athletes to ride with their parents to away events if that's the route that they want to take, because we're going to have a limited capacity in our home events, which will constitute a limited amount of gate receipts and revenue. we have to look at ways to cut expenses. And so travel out of district is one of those ways that we can maybe try and do some of that. So we're allowing, where in the past we haven't had to do that before, student athletes to ride.
Are we
with their
allowing
parents.
other students to ride with parents that are their own?
No, there's no carpooling.
And then as you can continue down throughout this, you'll see where it starts to talk about the games, who's permitted. And so for our football teams, we are allowed a max of 60 dressed football players on the sidelines. If there are, at this point, we do not have more than 60 on our team. But had we, they would have to be seated up in the bleachers to enjoy the game, because that is the regulations for this year. We are only permitted 20 cheerleaders, sideline cheerleaders. And they are not permitted to do stunts at this time. So what you'll see is for the spectators, coaches and student athletes have gotten used to this, and so they're ready for the protocol that's in place in the guidelines. For spectators, it's going to look and feel different than anything before. We are at 20% capacity, whether we're at a football game, a soccer game, a volleyball game. Those are our main fall sports that we offer, and so we are having to, per the Bullitt County Health Department, we're having to scan everybody's temperature, we're having to record names, their phone number, and we're having to ask those 2 questions that we ask of our student athletes and our coaches. We record it down, we store it for a minimum of 2 months after a game is completed, and if we get a phone call that says we've had an outbreak, we then turn over that documentation to the Bullitt County Health Department. So it's a lot to work out compared to what we're used to of just either collecting money and handing out a ticket, but we want to make sure that we provided an opportunity. And so if this is the way we have to do it, we're going to be compliant and make sure our student athletes enjoy it.
Rachel, do you know if I know there's a local radio station in Mount Washington that typically covers football games. Is that still happening? If we can find out if anybody's covering those, I think we ought to put it on our website to let them know.
I do know our athletic directors have been working with the media outlets to help get that coverage taken care of. So within the Kentucky High School Athletic Association documentation they sent us, they defined essential versus non-essential. Obviously our essential are our student athletes and our coaches.
Right.
They put media as non-essential, but to have a partnership with them in order to be able to have the games broadcasted.
Or live stream. If somebody's doing it, if we know about it, we should let everybody know.
We did, last year, board approved to have Pixelot in place. So where there's video cameras that have a live stream of the game as well as the scoreboards.
Yeah.
So we are working with our technology department to make sure that is up and functioning and running. So even if you're not at an event, you still have the ability to view the event.
Good.
So.
Yeah,
We can't get
Groups like the band and any clubs or activities, will they, even though they're probably not considered athletes, will they also be following these guidelines?
Well, so I'm going to correct one thing. All of anybody that participates in extracurricular, they're now a student athlete.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So just for that clarification purposes, because it became hard to identify who was what, so I basically have lumped everybody. So to follow up, we are permitted band, but band is a very reduced capacity. For example, North Bullitt is only doing their drumline team. That's it. So they're not having the full capacity. So they're all housed in an end zone with the smaller bleachers, and the max they worked out, our athletic directors worked out with our band directors, those that could come. Some of the schools aren't doing that because of the number of capacity and trying to figure out how to rotate and still play. So there is a reduced capacity for them until we can increase, and we've moved them in a different area in order to spread our fans out within our bleachers.
And the main thing we wanted to do was try and make sure that all of our student athletes and the participants, folks that were participating in these events, had their parents and immediate family had opportunities to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when we've had to reduce capacity significantly. To give you an example, I think it was cited in the paper today that last year we had almost 2,000 tickets sold at our opening football game. This year we're going to have 300. And so that severely limits the number of people that can come in. And so we want to make sure that immediate family have that first opportunity. So reluctantly right now, we've had to discontinue the use of issuing senior citizen passes and issuing passes for staff. Because normally staff could show their ID badge and get in. Unfortunately, we've had to stop that because of the current capacity limits that we have. And so all of our athletic directors are handling all the ticket information and ticket sales. It's all being done online right now. There's nothing changing hands. There's nothing available at the gate. And so our student athletes and their parents get first dibs, and then whatever's left over, it just gets opened up to the public.
How are we treating the visitor parents and those players? Do they also have to abide by our
Yes.
guidelines?
Yes.
Yes. Anytime they come onto our facilities to participate and play, they follow our guidelines. So just as Dr. Bacon shared, for a football game, it's 300. Visitors get 100 tickets, and then the home team gets 200. We felt that that was fair district-wide, whether it's an in-district competition or it's an out-of-district. So for example, this Friday night, North Bullitt and Bullitt Central play each other at North Bullitt. Bullitt Central has 100 tickets. North Bullitt has 200. Once they're sold out at 300, the game is sold out, even though there still is room, but that's our 20% capacity. So, and then for our middle school sports, what we have agreed upon and worked out with our athletic directors, are mainly our principals and assistant principals, is each student athlete, whether that's a basketball player or cheer or dance, has the ability to buy 2 passes. And that gets them into all Bullitt County basketball games. And so that will be, instead of doing it online, they'll have a pass where they'll get hole punched, and that's who's permitted in. So that will be up to families to work out who are the 2 that attend that night. And so that way unfortunately, we won't have tickets available for students to come watch because of this reduced capacity that we're following. We're hoping as we progress through the year, the 20% increases. That's a collaborative conversation between with Lisa Howe, the Bullitt County Health Department, and the Kentucky High School Athletic Association.
At least for our outdoor venues. We don't know if we'll be able to do that much on the indoor side, but we're hoping to at least be able to extend capacity in our outdoor events.
Have you, do students know they can't tailgate out in the parking lot from a football game? Because they're used to doing that too.
They have been informed.
We've seen some communications come out from our principals and our ADs, so we're hoping they heed that information.
There will be no tailgating in the parking lot.
Yeah. It will be, I think this is the phrase that's run around athletics, the 2020-2021 school year will look like no other, but we're experiencing that instructionally and athletically. So we're going to continue to plug through to provide opportunities, and when we run into hiccups, we're going to figure out how we can make it better.
Did you say middle school? You didn't mention football, but you said basketball. But football's the same way. Each player's going to get 2 passes.
We do not have middle school football. So
okay.
That's all run through Bullitt County Greater Youth.
Okay.
Yeah, Greater Bullitt County Youth Football League.
yeah, so our middle school fall sports are competitive cheer, dance, and girls basketball. And that's all that we offer for middle school sports through Bullitt County.
But what if it's played on a Bullitt East field, a middle school?
They have the same guidelines that they have to follow, but that's being worked out through them with the Bullitt County Health Department to get their guidelines approved. So I can only lay my head at night knowing the events and the activities that we put forth and what we allow. We've got a clean, streamlined system that may not be liked by many, but is the best that we can do for our student athletes and our coaches at this time.
Yeah, I think our first priority is to get the competitions played and as safely and efficiently as we can. And then as we get through this, hopefully we can loosen up on some of the capacity restraints that have been asked of us. So,
Thank you.
thanks,
You're
Rachel.
welcome. You're welcome.
And I got to say one more time, I mentioned it before, I know, but Rachel and our ADs and principals and Lisa Howe, I didn't mention her in the beginning, but I mean, she has just been instrumental all summer long, not just in this arena, but in every plan that we have developed and redeveloped and gone back and redone. And she's just been such a great help and always willing to stay extra and do extra time, and been a great caveat between us and the health department. I mean, she's just been phenomenal in doing this, and everybody's done it on a collaborative basis, and they've been great.
follow through, because we know archery's coming up, so I'll get archery up and rolling. But I still have a lot of questions that need to be answered from the Archery Foundation, more before I can say, here's what we're doing. Okay, you guys have a great
Thanks.
night, thank you.
Of course, when we first made the decision to start remotely, our focus sort of shifted to making sure our NTI got off to a great start. Now we've got a projected date for a return to in-person classes. We've been working really hard on updating all of our Healthy at School guidelines, and making sure that it's aligned with any of the updates that have come through from KDE. And so I'm just continue, folks, to keep watching our reopening webpage. It is continuing to be updated on almost a daily basis as schools start to finalize their reopening plans for when we start to transition students back on the 28th. I would still obviously caution parents and our staff and everyone else to prepare for shutdowns, even though we may be starting back on the 28th. If we see an increase in cases within a particular classroom or a building or even a feeder system, there could be opportunities for shutdowns there. So we'll be providing more and more information on our reopening website. So please make sure, just ask folks, please make sure that they look at that. We've already started bringing some kids back in at the beginning of this week. I know that they're doing some things in our ATC with bringing some of those kids back. They're also doing some things with our MSD students and other students with disabilities are coming in and getting some extra work done now, and that's going to continue to increase between now and the 28th. And so you'll see more and more smaller groups of students and adhering to the guidelines that are out there from KDE on that, coming in and getting them some work done. Next week will be an exciting week for us. We'll be starting to do our first round of benchmark testing for this year. As you know, last year we were granted a waiver by the Department of Education, Federal Department of Education, so we did not take any K-Prep assessments or end-of-the-year assessments. So this year we're going to go ahead and give our students the first round of assessments to see what learning gaps may exist as a result of our spring NTI. And those will be done remotely starting next week. If you've read anything or seen anything from the federal government, Betsy DeVos has indicated that there will be no waivers this year for any end-of-the-year assessments. It's because we take federal money, we've got to go by the federal guidelines. So if they don't issue any waiver opportunities, then there's a possibility that our students may have to take K-Prep and other assessments at the end of the school year. So we want to start to determine where our kids are and where we need to do the work between now and the end of the school year to try and get them prepared for that. So beginning next week will be the first round of that, and then we'll do another round around the Christmas break time period, and then a third round in the spring before spring break, so that we can have final data that we need to make that final push before those assessments may be given towards the end of the school year. So it'd be interesting, I think, to see where that data sits next week as a result of not being in school for 6 months basically and having remote instruction. You may have noticed on Friday of last week our new e-newsletters were sent out. We are this is part of our partnership with Andrea Brady and Schoolcom that we have entered into. John's been working extremely hard on that. And those are going to alternate weeks. And so one Friday will be a district newsletter, and then the next Friday families will receive a newsletter from their home high school, the high school that their student attends, or that their feeder program or feeder school is. And we're going to start at the high school level and hopefully incorporate other newsletters from other schools in the future. The positive to the approach that we're taking here is that each individual school sends newsletters out to their school community, but it's only accessible if you have a student in Infinite Campus that the system pulls from. The system that we're using now, anybody can subscribe to those newsletters. And so if you're just Joe Public and you want to know what's going on at Bullitt Central High School or North Bullitt or Bullitt East or at the district office, you can subscribe to those newsletters and get those in your email inboxes every Friday. And so we're going to be watching the clicks on those and number of clicks on those to see if we're able to extend our reach a little bit in the amount of information that we're providing folks, and try to get some feedback on how those are going. So on Friday this last week, the first district one went out, and then this week it'll be the first one for the high schools, and then next week we'll go back to another district one, so it'll rotate just like that. As you guys remember too, we set October 3rd as a tentative date where we would try to do something in person for our graduates for the 2020 class. Unfortunately, due again to the capacity limits that we have facing us, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do anything on that date. I know that that's a disappointment. We tried to stress to families in the spring that we wanted to do the virtual graduation as an opportunity to be able to honor and recognize them in a unique way. With lots of work went into getting those done and the videos put together and posted and aired on our YouTube channels. We were hopeful that we could make something happen for October the 3rd. However, when we reached out to the venue this week, they let us know that they have extreme capacity reductions there, and also anything that's done has to be floated through the Department of Public Health and ultimately the governor's office. And so with the limited amount of capacity and time that we have, we don't feel like that's going to be a really feasible option at this point. I also know that we've got a lot of our students that have already moved on into colleges and are in their jobs and doing some other things. And so I'm not sure what the attendance would have been like or participation would have been like for an event like that. So it looks like that's not going to be able to come to fruition like we hoped. I know there's some other things that you guys wanted some information on, so I've asked Mr. Euler to come in, and I know he's in the building someplace, and so we're going to ask him to walk in and give us an update on a few items as well. Looks like he's brought some friends with him. I didn't know he had any friends.
Back up.
Use that term very loosely. Good evening. Ms. Atherton, I did receive some questions. You want to start with the first one?
He has
Yep.
the list, and I've kind of gathered them from, just.
Yeah, so the first one is
yeah,
just
the first,
where we are on the
first one.
training for
Yeah,
the
like in March
alarm
when you
system.
came on, Diane and I have been working, trying to gather some information about our security systems, our alert, systems, all that. I think you were given the list of things that your predecessor was trying to get together, and we're just asking, what's the status of that now? Have all of our building principals signed off that they've been trained on the alerts, alarms, and all that?
The answer is yes and no, which is not a good answer. I do know that my predecessor went to each building along with Amtech, January timeframe, and went through a training with the building principals, front office staff, and there was a signature sheet. But as you all well know, there wasn't a good handoff between my predecessor and myself, which means I don't have those signed sheets. Amtech verified that the training was done. And the reality since then is we've had some turnover. They've had some turnover as well. We have 3 new building principals. We have 4 new head custodians. So the solution is, after contacting Amtech, they're going to come back and do a face-to-face with all the principals that have been trained, our 3 new building principals and our 4 new head custodians, to ensure we get a signature for everybody trained.
What's your timeline on that?
Within the next week. We spoke with them today. It'll get done.
Good.
I will say this, maintenance department, we field and address any Amtech issue when we get a call. We generate a work order, which ultimately ends up in a purchase order, and we send Amtech as quick as we can to resolve the issues. We've worked with head custodians and building principals to update their call order or priority this summer. And generally, our building principals don't contact us with a lot of problems. We replaced 2 motherboards. We had the one at Rock, I don't want to tell you wrong, at Riverview that was hit by lightning. We replaced that motherboard. We had to replace the motherboard in transportation. So we keep those systems as updated as we can. So the documentation piece was the key word in your statement, and it's remiss on my part not to have that in my hand. I'll just admit. I certainly have no excuse, but it's easier for me when I start the project from the beginning and run it to the end. That way, I got nobody but me to blame. So I'll get that resolved.
And what about testing the systems?
We've had, Amtech did come in August and tested all the security systems at all our schools. That report should be here this week.
And the technology integration we've got with the phone system is phenomenal, because when those things test, I get a loud noise that goes off in my pocket to let me know that there's something going on, so.
Good, good.
It's phenomenal. So,
What's next on the list?
water bottle, can you give an update on the status of water bottle filling stations?
The filling
All right.
stations in all schools, just.
All right, so we've installed 72 bottle fillers up to this point. High school's got 4, middle school's got 3, elementary school's got 3, except for the smaller ones, which would be Lebanon Junction. Nichols, of course, is very small. A couple of our middle schools got 4. I know Mount Washington, right off the top of my head, Mount Washington Middle School is multi-floored. We installed an additional one in their cafeteria. We have 20 bottle fillers stockpiled to plus up the schools as needed. With short notice, we felt like we could plan for a certain number, but undoubtedly, as we get closer to having students in our building, and when we get students in our building, we didn't want to not have the machine ready to install. It takes about 20 or 25 minutes to install a machine, so they do go fairly quickly once a need is identified.
Can you talk, I know this went on the list, but can you talk about the number of square footage that we've gotten disinfected over the course of the last 2.5 months?
All right, so in a little over 5 weeks, we sanitized and fogged 4.4 million square feet, and that doesn't count the school buses. So, and we really only have 2.2 million square feet, but we had to do them twice, if you all will recall. There were 2 chemicals. We sprayed or fogged vital oxide, and then we followed up with BioProtect 500. So we've seen every square foot of this district.
Do you have is there a plan for the water fillers, like in that first week when we do get kids back? Who's going to check them? Who's going to let you all know? How are you all going to just make sure if they need to be?
Well, our head custodians will ultimately
Okay.
be checking those machines. The water to the existing water fountains is turned off. That was one of the pluses and minuses of adding the machines that we added. Obviously, the drains at those water fountains still work.
When did you turn those off?
As we installed.
The College Career Center at Bullitt East High School, we just did a walk around and I hit the water fountain and it came on, so
I'll
just
check
to
it.
let you know. Back in the College Career Center, and that might be the case for all of them because they might not have thought about those new ones.
I'll check them. Thank you.
Yeah, I know our buildings right now, even with only our teachers in there, are still getting fogged about 3 times a week. Can you talk about what the plan is for when we bring our students back?
They are. So for cleaning, disinfection plans and schedules for our schools, as early as the end of July, in fact, July 22nd, meeting with the custodians, head custodians in the district, we already had a matrix laid out for the different areas that needed to be cleaned and or sanitized daily, and broke those down into whether it was an area that would need to be sanitized hourly, daily, or as needed. That information was disseminated early on. Fogging, we are not fogging as much now as we will when we have students in the building. The adults are much easier to care for than students. So our custodians are fogging 3 times a week just because we have staff in and out of the building. We've disseminated a lot of resources already to our schools, so we can, initially, just to get started with our staff in the building, we've distributed medical masks. Every school has 4 cases of sanitary wipes, 8 cases of hand sanitizer. We have 120 sanitizing stations in our school. We have 30 on standby. We have a total of 1.6 million sanitary wipes. We have over 500 gallons of vital oxide on standby to fog. And the advantage of vital oxide is it kills 99.9% and it doesn't have a smell. The bleach water mix, the 1/3 of a cup to a gallon, which is recommended by the CDC, ultimately, if we fog in areas where adults or students are going to be within a short period of time, we'll have ongoing complaints. So the vital oxide is to use instead of the bleach water mix, unless it's after hours, where we can use the bleach water mix. It's much less expensive.
So are teachers gonna have those Clorox wipes in their classroom? Are they gonna hand them out to the kids? Are the kids gonna clean their desks before? I'm talking specifically like middle and high. When middle schools probably aren't gonna change classes, their teachers will, but at the high school, when the kids change classes, who's gonna clean those desks?
Well, Dr. Bacon, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we had our Healthy at Work meetings, the plan was that teachers would have a supply of sanitary wipes, and students would wipe those desks on their way out of the classroom.
Okay.
So it's going to take a considerable number of sanitary wipes to keep up or to maintain.
That's correct.
So now what about the elementary students? Is that the same for them?
As long as they're of age and they can.
Well, and they stay in their
And
rooms.
they don't
more
change
than-
classes.
they don't-
Right.
They don't change, but they, every so often.
I understand that,
But they'll
And they
still
stay
need to
at their
wipe their
desk.
desk.
but those kids do sometimes move from desk to desk or whatever. So
They do, they'll
that
have-
it will be available in the classroom.
Yes,
for
ma'am.
teacher use. Thank you.
And I think they also are to move less than they typically would, all of them, as little as possible. I mean, they're gonna be doing some group stuff, but they'll be staying with the desk that they're
Mm-hmm.
issued.
That is correct.
One of the things that I didn't mention was the front offices at our schools will, in fact, the install started this week, the plexiglass panels for the front office, so that any interaction with other adults, there's some protection there for the front office staff.
Restrooms. How are you gonna sanitize those community restrooms in all
Right.
schools?
It's kind of ironic you all ask some of these questions. I have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with some of our veteran head custodians to include 3 of my maintenance personnel that we liberated from the custodial ranks. We're actually discussing the intervals for sanitation purposes, and each area that has to be sanitized, we want intervals to include a signature or at least initials that they're getting done at those times.
That's good.
And that's restrooms, wiping down door handles, our common areas, the foyer, any place where students enter and exit. We want to make sure that we've done our due diligence to ensure those areas are sanitized and there's some accountability.
And so you haven't set that interval schedule yet, right?
No, I want to get as much input as I can, especially
Sure.
from the custodians I chose, because if these are the lead, I'm from the country, these are the lead cows. These are the ones the others will follow.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure I gained their input before I put a system in place.
I'd
Much
love
of
to
the,
see the schedule when you get it. I'd love to see the intervals.
no problem. Much of the sanitizing will be done by the temporary staff that you all made available
Yeah.
at the last board meeting. So once we get students in and we get those folks on board, we'll train them up and put them to work.
Good.
Which is another important reason that we're phasing those students in slower rather than dumping everybody at the schools on the first day. So it gives us an opportunity
That's great.
to try these systems out to make sure that there aren't any holes, we can plug them where we need to, and that we've truly gotten everything set that way that we need to. Any update on the clocks?
All right.
You were
So.
waiting on that one, weren't you?
Absolutely. You know, I've been around and been in some new schools. Some new schools don't have clocks in the hallways at all. And one of the reasons is because a lot of students have a cell phone and/or a smartwatch. So my first thought, and I was zooming in or Googling in to the last board meeting, my first thought was, I've seen the clocks. I know the hands don't move. They're antiquated. They're mechanical clocks. At a minimum, we should take them down and put cover plates on them and put ceiling tiles where they're at.
Yeah.
But that being said, had a vendor look at the clocks, and this vendor thought they could fix them, and I thought, that's not going to be an option, because
No.
here's, I would report to you all they're fixed, and they would break the next day. So I don't believe in putting a Band-Aid on something that needs a tourniquet. So,
I asked that question. I don't care if they have plates on them and you take the clocks down.
well, here's our other two options. We did have a vendor look at the clocks, and we're looking at a wireless system, which would be digital clocks, and then our other choice would be a hardwire upgrade. And until I get a quote, which will be fairly quickly, I'm not sure what that would cost. And I'm okay with taking down what we have. This particular vendor actually got up on a ladder and fixed one of them today, and it's like, hey, we can fix them. I'm like, no, we can't. So that's not going to be an option. We either need to upgrade or take them down, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because,
And it's expensive, go with the cheaper, I mean, we just don't want them looking at a clock that's got the wrong time on it, because
Well,
they do
and
have their time,
most
so
all
just
of
get them out of
them,
there.
most all of them carry cell phones now anyway. There's systems in place where music plays between classes, and then
Yeah.
it stops playing a minute before the bell rings, so students have learned that. And I just don't know that clocks are
Just get them out of there.
as much a
Yeah.
necessity in the
Yeah.
hallways anymore.
Right, just get them down and out of there, put a plate on them.
I like that choice.
Yeah.
That's pretty easy. We'll take
Yeah.
care of that, too.
I gotta brag on my guy. He's been working extremely hard, and his guys have been working extremely hard. Every time I'm out at the school, they're at it, and those custodians are too. And we've restructured that now to where those head custodians are underneath those guys and in that department now. So there's a lot of more collaboration going on. You can tell that, and a lot more standardization as far as the cleanliness and the things that are going on between each building. And big shout out to that group.
We were in, I mean, I don't want to say this about anybody in the past, including myself, but Diane and I were in Bullitt East, and I've never seen the front lobby and the hallways look this shiny.
Yeah, that's great.
And I've been retired 8 years, but I
They've,
don't remember them being that shiny. Do you?
When I came on board, there were 5 buildings, in my opinion, that were substandard. The building that you mentioned,
Yeah.
they'd had a lot of turnover in the custodial staff, and it needed a lot of help. I've been in all the buildings within the last 3 weeks, and our buildings look
They
great.
look good. They look good.
They do. Our custodial staff is working hard. The benefit of maintenance or myself having some oversight is they can reach out directly to me, and it's a lot faster to resolve their issues or concerns.
Yeah.
So that's been a benefit. The personnel type issues, we've been able to eliminate some issues that could have ended in suspension, termination, and been able to handle those matters in a timely manner or a timely fashion where we could salvage an employee or get the employee back on the right track. So that's a good thing also. Maintenance staff, I think they had their doubts about me when I took over, and I definitely had my doubts about them. But a great group of folks. They work hard. They work hard because I ask them to, not because I demand or direct. So it's been a good run so far, and I still appreciate the opportunity.
Good. Anything else on your list?
That's it. It's all. Unless you guys have anything else for.
That's good.
Sure.
That's good you're saying, you talked about the cows. So I was gonna say, do you wanna go back to the country?
No, not yet.
It's a lot easier with
I
cows.
still go back every weekend. There's a lot of people up here.
Ms. Belcher?
Do you have the free and reduced lunch application numbers?
Yeah, I was gonna have Adrian talk about that. I was gonna let him go if we didn't have anything else from a building standpoint.
Oh, no.
Yeah, nothing else.
That's
I thought
fine.
you were asking
No,
for
it's fine.
additional stuff.
I think everything sounds great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angela.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, George.
I'll send you my intervals to all
Okay.
of y'all when we get them built.
See you, George.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I gotta have my numbers with me, Linda, so.
Well, my question was, has the numbers increased?
Actually, no. Our free and reduced, I've had Tammy pull the last two, just compared to last year and this year. And I actually broke it down by elementary and middle and high, because I kind of wanted to see where that was at. So, free total for elementary, last year was 2,909. This year is 2,302. Middle school last year was 1,537, and this year so far, now that's, like this is as of today, is 1,392. Now high school has gone up. High school last year was 1,684, and this year, as of today, they're at 1,759.
Do you think the Cloud Academy has anything to do with the numbers?
No.
But they probably haven't applied.
It could be a combination of
could
things.
be a
We-
combination.
We haven't had a chance to hound them for that,
Yeah.
those forms back either, because it's still paper form, is it not, or is it electronic now? Did we go
No,
to-
it's electronic.
It's electronic?
Yeah.
So we
it's
don't
been
have, we haven't had a
electronic.
chance to,
Yeah, they can get a hard copy in the office, but, we don't have a lot of parents coming in.
Are we delivering lunches to homes?
we are.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
So-
seen
so
that
they're
firsthand.
currently-
Yes.
We are
They're
breakfast,
currently getting
breakfast and lunch.
lunches,
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm just concerned because, you keep hearing about so many people have lost their jobs and whatever.
Right. Well, I would have thought, Linda, I would kind of thought the same thing too, but, no. But I will say, even in a normal school, when I say normal, when we're all be in person, we would have had, it's still kind of early, because a lot of times it really takes till about October till you really start to get a lot of those in. And I think come September 28th, we'll see a little bit more of that too. So, yeah.
And I threw in that second part of that, because I'm just curious how many schools we have that are
CEP?
totally free lunch.
Guess it's
Yeah.
9, isn't it? Or
What?
10?
No,
9 or
see,
10?
you thought it'd gone up.
No, CEP, we have.
13.
Is it 13 now?
That's
We
what I
have,
thought.
we have 9 elementary and, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, we have 9 elementary and 3 middle schools.
Three
So
middle.
the elementary schools are Roby, Shepherdsville, Cedar Grove, LJ, and Nichols. Freedom, Overdale, Maryville, Brooks, and Crossroads. Then middle schools are Bullitt Lake Middle, Bernheim, and Zoneton. Those are CEP. Now, just to clarify the difference between CEP, that doesn't mean all the students there qualify for free and reduced lunch according to FRAM. That's a whole different animal. CEP, and I can't tell you the exact calculation because I have to work with like coming up, I used to work with Angela on, because it impacts our Title I too, our Title I funding. So there's a certain formula that has to be done on the food service end that qualifies a school or not for CEP.
But that's how many we have.
That's how many we currently have.
12.
Are any of these new changes?
Freedom is the newest one.
We're losing somebody, Becky, you said 13, that's,
I think there's 13.
yeah.
Who's the other one?
I don't know.
Because I looked at our Title I, I pulled this right off of our Title I that has all of our CEP. We added,
Freedom was the most recent.
that's what we
Who?
just did.
Freedom
Freedom.
was the most recent.
Yeah, they were on her list, yeah.
We have Shepherdsville.
Yep.
Maryville.
Yep.
Brooks.
Yep.
LJ, Nichols.
Mhm.
Overdale.
Mhm.
Freedom. Cedar Grove.
Mhm.
Roby, Crossroads.
That's
Yep.
11.
That's,
And then we have Zoneton, Bernheim, Bullitt Lake.
It's 10 and 3,
10 and 3, 13, sorry.
13 total.
10 and 13.
I didn't count Crossroads in my numbers here. 13. It's 13, you're right. Yeah.
I don't think she said Overdale.
Well, that's good. I was just curious how many schools actually have that.
Yeah.
What else is on that list?
Yeah, well, supply list and fundraisers was something I know that you guys wanted to talk about as well.
And I think really what Linda and I have talked about is just getting it on on the plate.
No,
It's not urgent now, but we're talking
Right.
about
No,
next year.
and I agree with
Right.
you, and
So we need to be prepared.
I think we do
Right.
need to do everything we possibly can to limit the outside costs for families when it comes to back-to-school supplies and things. There's a balance there, and I think one of the things we're gonna really need to have a conversation about is, what do we say is gonna be, should be the responsibility of the school to provide, and what should be the responsibility of the student to provide? We need to have a conversation about that first, and then I think from there, we could
Yes.
probably develop some pretty good guidelines for what those supply lists should entail. And then also look from a budgeting standpoint, what we're gonna require schools to do with some of that SPDM money too, because that's what some of that money is allocated for, is to
Yeah.
help provide some of those resources that maybe shouldn't necessarily trickle down to the student level. But,
Yeah.
you know, when you talk about backpacks and pouches and those kinds of things, then we need to just, again, have that kind of discussion about what should be the responsibility of the school versus what should be the
Right.
responsibility of the family.
Well, at the same time, we're not gonna look at, teachers still complain, they're putting out a lot of money.
Yeah.
What are they putting out a lot of money for? Are they essentials? Are they extra things? I know when I taught, I wanted extra things, so I paid for those.
Right.
So that may be something, I don't know how you look at that, but that may be something.
Yeah.
The other concern I have is during the middle of the year, in the past, I know teachers have asked for additional items that were on the school supply list. And I have a real problem with a teacher asking a class to bring in an item, and if you bring it in, you get a prize. If you didn't bring it in, you don't get a prize. That concerns me, because not every parent is able to get to the store and get prizes.
Yeah.
So I would hope that the teachers, especially this year, would be a little bit more aware that not every parent can provide that every time.
It just needs to be voluntary, because there's people that'll just
Right.
grab a roll of paper towels and,
Yeah.
no problem at that home, but the next one can't do it, just anybody
Yeah.
who can. do it.
And just so you know, those things like
Get
paper
time.
towels and all that, that's more with, on the bottom, they'll put the wish list items. Now, I know.
They weren't separated.
Yeah,
And that's the other thing.
Yes.
At the top, maybe those need to be things that are really necessities, and these are, if you
Yes.
really want to bring in something extra.
right,
Yeah.
right.
But I really wondered if teacher used 24 rolls of paper towels
Mm-hmm.
and 24 boxes of Kleenexes on down the line.
Yeah.
Well, again, I
I
think
think
those
that is
are
it.
items we should be providing them. And
Well,
so
maybe
we
need
gotta,
to look at the end of the year and
Mhm.
have teachers, and we talked about this, and it might be something, again, we want to think about. Maybe they need to start doing inventory
Yes, what
of the
they have.
materials that they have left.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, at the end of the school year, you're going to have extra scissors, so does
That's
every
right.
kid have to bring in scissors? You're going to have extra whatever.
Right.
yeah.
So when we start the year, if we've got all that already, do we throw it out or do we just keep,
Yep.
So materials inventory may be something that
Yeah.
we may want to look at.
And then just that you're on it, you're, thinking about it, and we don't end up doing it next June, but we're
Right.
ahead of the game on it.
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah,
So
this
it's-
is something I really don't want to drop because I've heard
Yeah.
too many parents say, well, I know my child does their own free and reduced lunch, and I know they don't have to take this in, but I don't want my child to look different. So if that teacher asks for this first day, my child's going to have it.
Yep.
And sometimes parents really can't afford
Yep.
it.
Right.
And if
But I-
they can't afford it, they shouldn't be responsible for it.
But I do think we need to take a look from a district standpoint. I don't want any of this to fall on teachers by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think we need to look at, from a
Yeah.
district standpoint, what are some of those things that our teachers are asking families to provide and bring in that we should be providing as a district? Paper towels, wipes, 'cause I know disinfectant wipes, Clorox, some of those things are being asked too. We should be providing that. So we need to,
Well,
I agree.
We need to
That's
figure
the
out-
reason I wanted to bring it
Yeah.
now, because maybe we need to look at the budget for not
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
Right.
But next year,
Right.
what do we need to allocate to make sure that our teachers aren't having to put out a bunch of money and our parents are having to put out less?
And
Agreed.
I was sharing with Dr. Bacon when I started teaching a while ago in Warren County. It's when Mr. Brown was superintendent. We were provided like folders. So like I taught 4th grade, we got like a package of all the folders, you know what I
We
mean?
used
And
to
then
do
the
that.
kids didn't have to bring it, that was one of the things that we provided was I had the folders in my classroom, and so everybody got every color of every folder that we needed. So those type of things, Warren
I mean, we
County,
used to go to your first day meeting, and as a teacher, you received it there, you're standing there with a stack of everything you
Yes.
need, and then even in my days as early principal, and you too, we were handing out all these different packs of pencils
Yes.
and everything that was coming.
yeah.
And
yeah.
our PTAs sometimes would bring in a bunch of stuff, you know, and divvy it out so that teachers have
And the
that.
district bought it too.
So as far as fundraisers, I had to call the expert here about that one, Lisa, because she knows more about fundraisers than I do. I was asking her about how we could get a list of the fundraisers that schools have done last year, so I'm gonna let her kind of talk about that a little bit, because it sounds like a pretty,
The ones that were actually done, not their wish
Yes.
list fundraisers, but the ones that.
yes, that's what I,
actually-
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And if there's any way to find out what the money was used for,
Well,
because I know whenever
You do a
you ask to do a
fundraiser, you do a
fundraiser.
fundraiser, it's supposed to be.
It has to be on it,
You
yeah.
have to say
It's
that.
approved for what
You
the,
know.
yeah.
Those fundraisers are, they have to be board approved. Now, I can request the information from our bookkeepers at every location. And when they do a fundraiser, each one of them, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So when they do those fundraisers, they do them throughout the year. This year, I don't think they've done any probably yet.
We have, I got our one so
Maybe
far
a
this year.
couple?
We've had it just about two, yeah.
Two maybe?
Yeah.
But I know last year, just for the fundraiser, if we were to dig down into each one of them, I know a middle school, and I don't know, if you all know the size of a copier box, the size of a copier box and a half would have, that would be the fundraisers that we would have to go through. They don't have it in the system, they have it in the system where they can just, they put the money in, but in order to dig down into that, to find out the actual receipts for how much the parents are paying for each of those, would probably be extremely time consuming, and it'll cost more for us to actually have those bookkeepers do that. I can tell you what we bring in on fundraisers, if that's what you're wanting to know for each one of them. But like I said, if, say like you have an athletic fundraiser or a senior trip, for a senior trip. you
No,
might
I'm
have-
talking about academic supplies and those types of things. I know like football, cheerleading,
Yes.
that's a totally different animal as far as I'm concerned.
Come on.
So, like, I'll give you an example. So, I had, I know this year so far, Eastside Middle School, they've had a mum sale. And the purpose of those mums was to help with school supplies. That's supplies for schools, what it was listed as. Now, I don't know what that entailed. And then Brooks, they've had an online catalog, super fan fundraising, and it is to purchase safer playground equipment. So, now that's only two so far this year.
Okay, I have a question of you.
Sure.
It's been a while since I've been in the school district, so at one point in time, you wrote down every fundraiser you could possibly think of at the beginning of the year because there was one approval. That was it.
Yep.
Is that still true, that there's only one time that they can be approved?
Actually, we will do it twice. We
Two
will do it
times?
twice.
Yeah.
And if somebody absolutely has to have something, I mean, I would have no problem bringing it to the board asking for an approval.
And we just do that to try and keep inundating every
Yeah.
month with
Yeah.
fundraising
And I
requests.
understood that, but
Yes.
again, that's the reason I think you have a list this long of everybody trying to think of everything that they possibly
Yep.
could do.
Yes, yes. And I can get you a copy of those too if you want to.
We saw that, didn't we?
You did.
We've seen it.
We saw those lists, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and-
And if you want us to do that in a different way and more times throughout the year, we could certainly talk about doing that. I just don't,
You know, I don't know at this point in
Okay.
time the best
Well-
way to do it. I think that's something we need to be kind of looking at, because again, it seems like parents are putting out a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
And if it's needed, okay.
Yeah.
But if it's really not,
And who oversees the money coming in and the money going out?
The bookkeepers,
Yep.
the bookkeepers and the sponsors and all of those.
Like collecting it, is that what you're asking?
Now, like how much comes in, and
Yeah.
then the deposit of it, and then
Yeah.
the checks that are wrote, how it goes out.
Well, I can also tell you too, this year, as a matter of fact, we are adding a new fund called Fund 25, which is school money from the schools. So you are actually going to be able to see on our financial reports, you're going to be able to see how much money we're talking about that are in the schools with fees and things of that nature. So at the end of this year, that will be on our AFR. So you're gonna be able to see how much money is sitting in those school accounts. And I think you would be surprised, just one high school would probably have over $500,000.
Yeah.
Just sitting there.
Or more.
Yeah.
Or more, well, yes.
It used to drive our teachers crazy too, because the first thing in the morning, instead of actually interacting with the kids, they had to collect money.
Yes.
Is that still going on?
That, I mean, yes,
Like
that's how it is,
elementary more.
and that's how it is,
It's
yeah.
about red books.
Yeah, that's
I
because it's gotta be in
understand
by, yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, that's time away from the kids.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's all I had right
Well, if you
now.
want
Okay.
I'm sure there'll be more later.
If you want me to get you some more specific information on that fundraising thing, if you want to just call me and I'll drill down in one of them and see what we can
Maybe
find
just
out.
kind of talk
Don't-
about it and discuss it.
Don't your bookkeepers have those accounts? I mean,
They
they
do.
have it and they could just, I mean,
Yes.
without having to dig through receipts, I'm just saying,
Oh, I can give
they
you
can
their-
tell you their accounts and what they've done fundraising on. They can give you a list of those that they actually did and what they raised, not
what it was
athletics.
But
Not
what it was
athletics.
for, I'm
But
interested in.
EPS does
Don't
not
do it anymore.
report the actual, it only has certain pieces of information in their software system. They, in order to tell you exactly what some of it, unless there's enough room in there to type it, a lot of the bookkeepers, they may know what it is right off the bat, they can do that, but the system is limited as to how much information they're gonna be able to put in there without the paper copies.
Yeah.
I know, that's just one of those red book requirements that they have. I don't know if that's something EPS could change, I don't know.
Maybe I'll start coding that.
But I can see what I can get out of the system though. I know they can give me a report, tell me how much money they have.
Yeah.
I could do that.
And it's gonna be a lot. I'm just saying, it's gonna be a lot. I know at the high school, our budget was huge.
High school, yeah, they
Yeah.
have probably boxes,
Huge.
boxes of fundraising.
But you don't want, we don't want people to have to be digging through those. I know that you had to say what you're gonna raise the money for, and they can
Yes.
tell us how much they made.
Yeah.
And that's really what we need, what we're, Linda's
And
talking
again, my
about.
focus is on instruction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not athletics.
yeah.
Well, not at this time.
Yeah. And they're not a lot, a team might do something, but they lean on their,
Yeah.
well, I know, East they lean on that booster
Their
club.
booster
but they-
I
club.
know, Linda,
Yeah.
North is doing that. They've got a real active
yeah.
booster organization now, and I don't know about Central. They were kind of,
Well, I know their family and friends because I get a hit up from Bullock Central for
Yep, there you go.
$400 frequently.
and is it Booster Club that are doing it? Yeah, that's who raises their athletic money mostly.
And Linda, I do know one of the things that elementary
Hallelujah.
schools did a lot of fundraising for was for Chromebooks to try to be one-to-one. So now that we do have elementary, I mean, I know when I was at Overdale, that's what I would fundraise for, was Chromebooks for our kids to be one-to-one. So now that we have that, that should be one thing that they have there. They're always gonna have Chromebooks, so.
Have we,
I find it interesting that we're fundraising for playground equipment because at one time, with past superintendents, you had to get rid of all your playground equipment. Oh, yeah.
I'm not for that. I don't want to get rid of playgrounds.
Like, seriously, you know, it was like, nope. So, okay,
Like,
things
have
change.
we
Yeah.
designated the money that comes in from, I can't believe I've got a senior moment, but the money that's donated in lieu of, for our
Beam?
distillery.
Yeah.
Thank you, Being, yeah.
Yeah.
Have we designated that amount of money that comes in each year?
Yeah, yes, that money falls under, so I use that for, oh goodness. We've used it for a lot of college and career stuff. That's really
Yeah.
what, when that,
Yeah, that's what
when we had to
it's for.
redo that deal, we had to put it under the college and career. So, Naviance, I pay for a lot of that out of there. I've paid for anything, also to anything about, like our graduate profile work, anything to do with transition ready, college career. I'm trying
So
to
is
think
there
of-
money in that account, or is that money that gets spent totally every year?
No, there's money in that account, yes.
We didn't have to use it just for that. It
No,
was-
we didn't.
Well, in the-
It was directed toward that, but we didn't absolutely have to do that. Because remember, we made
It
that.
does have to be. We would have to go back and, because I had to go back after we changed the purpose of it, and I had to go back to Beam and make an addendum to that, and
Right.
it was approved, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But, I mean, we use it, And just depending on sometimes like the ACT, the pre-ACT and things like that, like anything to do to help all of that. We've taken trips for kids, to go to the ATC, some things like that we've paid out of there. So what it's done.
Are we down to 75,000 a year yet, or
No,
we're still at 200?
we
or
are
something?
at the two. I think we've only got maybe 2 more years.
330 and then 300?
Yeah, I think we've only got. I'd have to look, but I want to say we've only got 2 or 3 more years, and then we'll be down to the 75,000.
75,000.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking with, that money's there, and I don't think it's a big deal to make a change there. All they wanted in the beginning was that we were doing things to help kids.
Right.
That we could take some of that money and divvy it out to schools for school supplies and let them use that money for school supplies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at that
Yeah,
agreement,
yeah.
because I
We'd
think,
have
I do think it's a little tighter than that, but we can look at something we can look at.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And one of the things too with what that money, so like Lisa was talking about, like we don't have PD or instructional resources anymore. So what that's actually allowed me to do with some of our federal funds, like our Title II and our Title IV, and now our Title III that we've got. Also, I'll tell you about Title III in just a minute, but it's helped me to free up some of that funding in our federal funds that now I can pay for teachers to do professional learning, or when a principal calls me and they don't have money for professional learning, I can use that money because I can use that bean money to pull some of that because those are our highest cost. Anything to do with transition ready college career is our higher cost. So it's kind of like blending all that together. Is what that has done to help us. Just so you guys know, we have now had, as of yesterday, 50 new EL students that are in our district that are identified as EL.
50 new ones?
50 new.
English language
learners?
Yes, yeah. So I'll just,
Predominantly Spanish.
yes. So I'll just tell you, if we continue on this pattern, in about 5 years, we could probably have about 2,000 kids that are identified as EL if we continue on that pattern. So that's just something I really want to keep on the forefront, because that does change the way we think about.
We're going to have to change a lot of the way we approach a lot of things. If we have that many students, we're not nearly well equipped to handle that right now.
Well, I was gonna say, we should structure now before we have
Yes.
to do it at the
Yeah.
last
How many
minute.
students now?
Oh, goodness.
Did you
We
say
are
total?
now
300?
almost 300, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Yeah,
say.
and that's one, like,
Yeah.
since I've been in this position, in the last 3 years, this has,
It's
Yeah.
growing, it's growing every year. I mean,
it's
exponentially
growing
almost.
every year. So, and just one of the things we really have to work on as a district is, we have to think about civil rights law and making sure that we are providing information to them in their native language to families. So that's been one of the things, I've been working on, is trying to make sure that we did start to take the Title III money this year, which is the federal funding. It's not very much, but it does help us, with, just some additional funding for our EL population. One of the things, Title I funding, the Title I federal under ESSA is now requiring that we have EL parent meetings that are separate from our other Title I meetings as well. So thank you for hiring another EL teacher because it's helped us a lot. Mara Carson and Jeff Walker, they're our EL teachers, and they are wonderful and fabulous. And they work out of Brooks is where they work out of, and they're already on it, thinking about ways that we can get with our EL families. So.
I have one more question that I don't know which of the three of you will. When the new old mill opens, will there be a lump sum of money to help provide some of those instructional things for that particular school?
As far as when you say instructional things, you're just talking about just general materials?
I'm talking about maps or just general.
There's some of that stuff is built into the construction package, and then some of the stuff will actually come with them from Old Mill.
I figured that, but I just want to know if there were extra things that would.
It's not,
There's some rule about If it's consumable, it doesn't, but if it's something that's not consumable, like a map, I think it can be spent in that construction money.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the list.
That's a list, okay?
Unless anybody else
I
has
got
anything.
one other thing.
Sure.
I got one other thing, Debbie, chime in with me, good, please. We talked about before, or some of us did, about assistant principals.
Hmm.
Remember?
I did.
Okay, assistant principals. They may think that the policy and stuff now is for, what, 600 for elementary especially?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it still that way? I mean,
It is.
we were looking at maybe
Maybe dropping
hoping
that
to
like we
change
did for the
that to maybe 500.
You've got to have 600 before you get an assistant.
Yes.
principal.
In the staffing plan, yes.
600, and one of the things that we were kind of questioning was the policy of if you have $599 at a certain time and then boom, you go above 600, we kind of make them live with the way it is, and maybe adjusting that policy that at the point that you get that number, or if you're within the range of that number, you go ahead and you do it, and it's for that year even if it is, but we don't make people go all year even though they've reached the number.
Well, I mean, from my personal point of view, and I'm sure a lot of y'all chime in too, you have a lot more pressure nowadays on principals. We're asking principals to do a lot more now than, I mean, this situation and everything else. They need assistance, and you need two people in there doing the job, basically, is what you need.
I agree.
600 is pretty high.
600 is just too high. We need to have at least 500. I mean, I'd like to see it otherwise, but if you had it down to 500, I believe you have a lot of help, a lot of support. I think if we can't afford that, I mean, I don't think we can afford not to, because the situation is demanding a lot more out of people.
And the last time we left we decided not to do anything for this year because of the cloud
Right.
situation, so we knew that was gonna pull kids away, and it pulled a considerable number of kids away in each one of our buildings, so we're pretty considerably lower than 600 when we start back on the 28th in all of our elementary school buildings. I agree, I'm a proponent of trying to get some of those additional, because it's made a difference in the ones we put folks in. It's Shepherdsville and Brooks, it's completely made a difference in those two schools.
Yep.
With the commitment that we made as a board. If we do that and change our staffing formula, it will impact the budget. I mean, we'll have to look to see where we'll have to make some other cuts.
Right.
But that is, when we start about staffing plans and tentative budget for next year come January and February, then that's when we'll want to make those adjustments if we want to. And as a result, it'll cut I'm not gonna say it'll cut programs, but it's gonna cut some things from other places in order to make that
Do we
happen.
know how many that would be adding?
What would that be?
How many schools have
Well,
elementary schools?
But how many schools would that be?
How many-
Additional schools?
so, I would say you would have, are you all right?
Yeah.
Sorry. I would say you would have, so Crossroads, Roby would probably be up there.
Are you saying if we just lowered it to 500, is that what you're
Yeah.
asking?
Pleasant Grove, so Roby, Crossroads, Pleasant Grove.
I'd say that one would, yeah.
Maybe then I would say Old Mill, elementary wise.
Yeah, will be. She got,
LJ is,
no, LJ's 400.
No, they're-
They're never, I don't think they've ever been over
Cedar
500.
Grove could.
Yeah, it could possibly.
It's a possibility.
You're at 5 now.
But I'm just saying.
There was something on the list, and you're talking about that, I asked about the numbers at
Overdale,
Discovery
I mean,
School.
Overdale, no.
Freedom's gonna be close.
No.
No.
Freedom is.
Maryville?
No. So Nichols, Maryville, Freedom, and Overdale would not be, they would not.
And LJ would not be.
Maryville's a
No,
school
LJ wouldn't
that
be.
dropped below even having a counselor, and then we put a counselor there no matter what.
Overdale's losing too.
Overdale's gotten very small.
Yeah, they've lost.
They've gotten very small. They're actually, pretty small.
So you're talking 5?
Yeah, so let's just say, for example, if it's a, say 90,000 times 5, that's 450. That's not including any fringes. So $500,000 probably just to add probably those principals, assistant principals. Which is, if that's what we want to do and that's the direction we want to go, then we just make it go. But it is very, very expensive for that to happen.
So when you say it's made a difference at the two where we did it, what kind of difference has it made?
Yeah, so what I was gonna say is, sometimes I look at this too equitably as a need. So, like, when I look at Shepherdsville, you know, when Mr. Durham, I don't know if he's still around, but, I think I don't know if he's in his office, but when we were working on, you know, turning around Shepherdsville, there was a lot that had to be done.
Yep.
And so Patrick really alone trying to turn around a school and try to be instruction and try to take care of other things. It was just, we knew it was just gonna take longer. So that was there. And Brooks was kind of in the same situation. Plus, when the data that we looked at, so at that point in time, I don't know what it is right now, Brooks Elementary had the highest percentage of special ed in the whole district. They were 13%, which is really high for an elementary school. Now they are high EL. they are EL. So Brooks in our district by far has the most diverse as far as percentages and also with special education. Shepherdsville was kind of right there behind them, not as much, but right there behind them. But they were CSI status, and we knew we just couldn't facilitate that without giving Patrick the ability to work on instruction, because that's the work that needed to be done there. And I, you know, when I think about the two other schools that I would, don't forgive me. I'm not saying. The two other schools that I feel like would be the next on the list for getting, well, first of all, Pleasant Grove just always has a huge number of kids, just period. I mean, they always do. But as far as need goes and the student, and it to me would be Roby and Crossroads. Crossroads has, I don't know if last year they had 2 MSD units. We have our highest number of MSD students at Crossroads Elementary. It's a very, it is a school, I will tell you, that I definitely feel needs an assistance.
Well, to keep from,
And Roby, and I think Roby too. I'll just tell you, those two schools, it's when you look at equitable and needs, and it's Roby and Crossroads.
well, I think that's maybe what we need to do. We could change the policy with.
Instead of maybe the numbers.
Right, well, not just numbers, but you'd have to look at the need actually too, as far as test scores and all that
Their
other
population.
actual need, right.
Yeah. And I
You
think
could phase it in instead of having to just dump it in
Roby
one
and
sum.
Crossroads also have a higher population of our special ed
Right.
students.
I just think,
And what's their enrollment? Does anybody know enrollment?
I don't know enrollment off the top of my head. If Crossroads is not over 500, I would be shocked, because I know that when we were talking about putting some additional district staff at that building, Ms. Wright was like, I'm gonna have to find a fault. She was like, I have no room in this building to put anybody
Crossroads is
anywhere.
high. Crossroads always have it. I just think we have to start, as a board, we need to start looking at this too. Yeah, it may cost some programs somewhere, but we're going to have to start transitioning while you have the time and the ability to evenly transition, not just whack and cut and jump at something.
You about to get that, Andy?
I am actually.
Good, thank you.
Do all of our elementary schools have counselors now?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, are there other, I mean, another thing too, you could possibly even think about is, are there other schools that can take more students?
Right.
I know that's not what anybody wants to hear, but I mean, if you have one school like, say, Overdale, which needs more kids there, and you got another one that's packed, I mean, I don't know. But I mean, I think it's something you could definitely look at.
Well,
I
there's
really
gonna
think
be,
it probably
when the old mill, when the new old mill, when it opens, that's gonna impact all the way to Pleasant Grove.
Crossroads
Yes.
currently has 415 active students.
415?
Now, I wonder if
That's how many actual zero or K through 5 student accounts exist, meaning they're active enrolled
And you know,
And that's-
sometimes those little preschool kids demand a lot of time too, and we don't always take that into consideration. Because I had visited Roby's preschool,
You already got that.
and it's an interesting group of kids.
What's the enrollment in Pleasant Grove?
Should be about 580.
564.
Five,
It's
six?
always, in the last 2 or 3 years, it's over 600
Yeah,
around that.
they're always.
Now, I will say, though, and it's, a school with 400, just to say 400, 350, 400, it would be rare for a school like that to have a designated principal, AP, and instructional coach.
Yes.
So I think that's something else too that you have to think about is we've invested in the instructional coach role to try and help with that instructional piece as well. And that also needs to be added into the equation when we have that
Yeah,
conversation.
and we're not talking about dropping to 400 anyway. We're
Right,
saying
I'm just-
500, and I don't know,
Yeah.
haven't heard yet if any of them qualify for 500 or 550, you know.
Have you seen that the instructional coaches have made a big difference?
Oh, I think so, without a doubt. Now, the relationship and the role that they play is different than an administrator, and I think that's what makes it a valuable position, because it's not evaluative, it's strictly a coach, it's there to help facilitate the PLC process and the data conversations and instructional strategy implementation and those kinds of things in a non-evaluative way. And the research behind that is exponential in helping teachers grow more effectively than having your quote-unquote your boss evaluate you.
Andy?
And so there's been,
Hold on, order by.
Sorry, I'm just,
and just, Ms. Belcher, I've not been in a district before that has invested in the instructional coach process like I've been here. And I think the amount of growth that I've been able to see in teachers and the work that actually happens at the PLC level has been exponentially better here than I've seen in other places.
Well, I know I've observed one at a particular school, and she did an outstanding job of going in and doing some model teaching and things.
Yep.
But again, I didn't know if all the schools were really being able to use those individuals like that. And she was
a
great.
lot of districts
I
have them.
evaluate all coaches.
Oh, you did?
I do.
Yeah.
And we follow the Diane Sweeney model. It's called student-centered coaching. And there's a protocol that we use. It's a particular coaching cycle process that we use. It's not based on what the teacher per se is doing. It's about what the outcomes that we see in the students. Then it allows the teacher to reflect on what happened to change practice.
Yep.
So that's our model that we use. I meet with them every month. We do training. We out-coach in 2 districts. So I know the value of that if it's done right, and I try to do it right.
Well, which is why we too switched to the walkthrough model being the Elliott, which actually also looks at student engagement and what the students are doing versus what the teacher is doing. So it allows for a whole lot better collaborative conversation between the principal and the instructional coach when they're both looking at just their walkthrough, which is different than the evaluation, piece of that and observations. And so they've been able to go back in and really form better collegial relationships and supportive relationships from the principal's role and the instructional coach role because we've combined those two systems.
What elementary schools have more than 550?
Shepherdsville, they already have a assistant principal.
Yeah.
Let's see, 055, that's Mount Washington Elementary, they have 556. 065, that's Pleasant Grove, 564, they have 564 kids, and the rest go to middle and high school.
So was that Pleasant Grove, not Cedar Grove, right? You
Yes,
said
Pleasant
Grove.
Grove.
2.
Just 2. Roby is 090, and they have 435 kids.
How much does Old Mill Elementary have?
078 is their code, and they are 497, so they're right there.
So then there's 3.
What about we just revisit this after we get back in school and in
Yeah.
October we revisit and see what the numbers are?
Freedom's 479. but other than that, they're.
But I do think we're gonna
That's
have to
good.
look at more of the criteria than just raw numbers. I think there are gonna be some other things that we have to take in place, and we may not be able to do everything at once. It might be a situation where we might wanna phase it in over the course of the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I just want to be careful that we don't pass people, and I mean, we got Pleasant Grove that's been chewing at that 600, and then we go, okay, we're gonna do it over here because of this. I just want to make sure that we don't give off an unfair feeling.
No, I'm with you, but in 2 years, if we open Old Mill though, and it's gonna relieve
It will
some of that,
cost
then
them,
that
right.
might,
I
have an
don't
effect
see us
too.
flip-flopping either.
Yeah.
I have 500 this year, I'm gonna only have 450, so you're gonna take my person away?
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
That happened to me, and it's hard.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
So just keep an eye on
Put it on the list of things to look at again come November, December.
February, I think we did the
Right.
staffing.
Yeah, you'll approve the staffing formula in February, so it'll have to be done before then, and then we really get to going on the tentative budget.
You say that on me.
And mid-year budget reductions and what happens with the state budget in January is gonna have a huge role in that too, because we don't know what that's gonna look like either.
If we get whacked a lot, I mean, we may be whacking things without.
I know, right?
Maybe taking a weed eater to thing.
Yeah.
Did he say
Stop it.
8% maybe at the college level? I think I heard 8% possible.
Yes, 8%.
What's that?
That's the number that's been thrown out by the governor as possible reduction, at least in post-secondary world, so. If they came at us at 8%, it would hurt.
All right, anybody have any other general discussion? Lots of
Just, I
ideas.
think we need to show that we really do appreciate all the hard work you've done and all the people that you've.
Oh,
worked with.
thank you, and I'm telling you, everybody has worked their tails off. Becky, Adrian, everybody, our whole district office leadership team, all the way down to the principals, teachers, support staff, everybody's worked so hard. And I know they can't wait to start seeing kiddos on the 28th. So we've seen some positive trends too in our local numbers. Last week was the first week that we've had the 7-day active cases in Bullitt County. We've seen a reduction, so we're continuing to watch that. I think this week might be just a little bit higher, but it's not going to be the jump that we saw the previous 2 weeks. So there's some good data coming in that are going to shows us that we're getting close to being able to allow that to happen. And I'm just keep being encouraged by the fact that we've had our teachers now in 3 weeks, and we've had groups of students in, we've had practices going on, and the things, our coaches and our teachers and our staff have been taking things serious enough that we've not had any of those in-house transmissions, and I think that's a big, says a lot about the things we have in place too.
And all the work Lisa has done, because she had to hold her breath through that whole assistant principal conversation.
She and I would have had a meeting tomorrow, starting breaking that down.
Like you're picking on me.
Yeah.
Okay, we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Have a motion, need a second?
I'll second.
Darryl second, all those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes.